Brian Haldane here with you, and I am joined now by Senator Bill Cassidy, checking in with what our senator is up to on our behalf in Washington, D.C. Senator Cassidy, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Brian. Thank you for having me, brother.
Always, man. Love having you on because you cover a lot of ground, and I appreciate that. And that's what we're going to do today. And I want to start with something you've been working on, something obviously near and dear to your heart with as a doctor, and your efforts to lower drug prices. Where are we at with that?
Yeah, we're in the middle of it. And there's no silver bullet to lower drug prices, but there's silver buckshot. You can hit here, 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 and there, and overall costs are lower. And by the way, Brian, if there's one thing, I go to church and I got a Bernie Sanders supporter, a Donald Trump supporter, pulling on my shirt with the same message, it's lower the cost of health care, particularly drug prices. So we're looking at both the pharmacy benefit managers, how they are kind of increasing the cost, serving as a middleman, if you will, how the drug companies themselves for either generic or name brand are doing these high list prices, knowing that there's going to be a rebate, but somehow the rebate doesn't come to you and me. And by the way, now there's a company putting out a generic insulin, trying to lower the cost of insulin, and the PBM's not going to carry it. So, I mean, because they're not getting the same rebate. There is racket upon racket. We're going after it all.
Well, that's good. I mean, like, just from the everyday stuff, like, we're in the midst of what's being dubbed the longest flu season ever, and I think we all know how expensive Tamiflu is. And then, like, you go from that to, I've got a friend who has to take cancer meds on a regular basis, and it just one or the other, or God forbid both, and you're just constantly broke as a result of it. So I like the term silver buckshot. That tells me that at least, you know, we can start to check things off of boxes that might get us in the process of getting there.
Yeah, so we got about 10 different bills and that are going after drug prices, all of them with Democrats. I say that because I want to pass these bills. They're not just messaging bills. I want to pass them. You need 60 votes in the Senate, which means we need at least 6 Democrats, and then you got to get it through the House. Right. So I'm hoping my Democratic colleagues go to Pelosi and say, this is a good bill. Let's go ahead and put it together and get it through your democratically controlled House. And, of course, I'll rely upon my Louisiana congressional delegation to help as well. But one example that's already happened. There was a pharmacist from North Shore came to D.C., told me how under the contract terms with his pharmacy benefit manager, he could not tell a patient that it was cheaper for the patient to pay cash than to pay their insurance copay. He couldn't buy contract because he would lose the contract that he told the patient this. It was called a gag clause. We worked across the aisle. We got it signed into law by President Trump. I'm standing behind him as he's doing the signing ceremony, just looking over his shoulder, thinking of that pharmacist on the North Shore that did a service for the entire country. Now, tell me, what difference does this make? So I mentioned this to this guy down having coffee with him in Metairie. He looks off and he says, you know, I was put on a blood thinner. I went to the pharmacy, and they told me my copay was $190. I said, what? How much if I pay cash? And they said, well, since you ask, I can tell you $70 if you pay cash.
Insane.
$120 he saved because he had the presence of mind to ask how much if I pay cash. Now it is no longer illegal for the pharmacist to tell you. That's one thing. That's one of the buckshot we've already passed.
Love it. I mean, that just right off the top. Boom. And stuff like that is simple and can be done simply. Want to shift gears here because we got a lot of ground to cover, so I apologize if I'm kind of buckshot with my prep this morning. Story in The Advocate about the Stanford Ponzi scheme is still hurting people. I mean, we're talking like a decade removed from it, but I believe you have some updates on where we are with folks that are being made whole and still haven't to this day.
Oh, yeah, just for people who don't know about it, there was a Stanford group, a guy named Stanford who's now in jail. It was a total ripoff, and no one knew it. Very sophisticated investors who investigated what they were investing in got ripped off. A lot of people who had a lot of savings from working at Exxon, they transferred their savings over to the Stanford group, got ripped off. Now there's kind of an ongoing ripoff, if you will. first, this past week, I had a meeting with a bank out of, I think, Switzerland called Societe Generale. My French is a little weak, but hang with me.
Okay.
And Stanford had invested millions over there. The receiver is trying to get the money back out of them, and so far there's been a real resistance to that. Okay, so we met with the society people to see, okay, what's going on? Why is there a resistance? But what they told me was also interesting, that the receiver is going after people who owe maybe $1 million. Now, that sounds like a lot of money. But no, when I say, it's people that Stanford gave money to, and so you're trying to claw it back. But they pointed out that you easily cruise through $1 million worth of legal fees. And if the receiver doesn't collect the money, the $1 million that the receiver racked up are going to come from the total balance that's eventually recovered, no matter where it's recovered from. Now, I've always had a suspicion that the receiver – now, by the way, I have to check this out, but I've seen other evidence of it. So one thing that I'm going to look at as well is whether or not the receiver is wisely pursuing those that he can get money from and not just frittering away whatever settlement eventually is recovered. One more thing, Brian. By the way, I put on my Facebook page, Bill Cassidy at Facebook, whatever it is, the original hearing in which the CIPIC, the federal agency that governed this, came to the House Financial Services Committee. I was on in the House at the time, and they let me sit in the committee hearing. And you can see some of the issues raised, so you can go on our Facebook page and see that if you want.
And as it stands right now, there's only 5% has made it back where it needs to be. Is there and you had mentioned going after those where you know the money will be. Is there a projected goal here, or are we still looking for the entire amount?
Well, you know that a lot of it cannot be recovered,
right,
for whatever reason. And so they're trying to get as much as possible. And so in fairness, if the receiver is going after everything that's possible, that's a good thing. On the other hand, if they're going after things which are going to fritter away the eventual settlement, that's not a good thing. So that's that's something we're currently looking at.
Well, I mean, we're a decade into it at this point. I'm sure some folks are just to the point of like, forget it. Whatever I can get, I'll take whatever I can get at this point. You know, it's just let's close up this book and move on. Talking about closing up books and moving on, there's still a lot of folks that have not yet recovered from the flood yet. How dialed in are you on flood recovery and where we're at there?
Incredibly dialed in. Right now, we're still waiting for the administration to come out with their interpretation of rules Congress passed regarding duplication of benefits. Someone who was told to take a small business administration loan and did so, not realizing that it would make them ineligible for a Restore Louisiana grant. So the so-called duplication of benefits. And some people applied, never took the money, but still don't get the grant. And so it's so we've been fighting this the whole way, because at first we thought we had the right language, and the Office of Management and Budget said, nope, doesn't work. So we passed another piece of legislation that we thought got to the right place. And they're saying, well, we're not sure how we're going to interpret this. And so we've been meeting with them to go after this. They're supposed to come out with a rule any day now. And frankly, if they don't rule the way that Congress clearly intended them to rule, we'll go speak to the president.
Had a user in our activity stream commenting back to us saying there's some folks still having trouble getting money from HUD. So I wanted to touch on that just a little bit.
Yeah, that's all part of this, because HUD is the one that dispenses these dollars. And so, but on the other hand, if somebody's having an issue, they can call Michael in my office, 225-929-7711. Call Michael, and if we can help you, we're going to do our darndest to help you.
Senator Bill Cassidy is our guest. Got a little bit over 2 minutes to go, and I don't want to let you go without talking about the Mueller report in some form or fashion. How much of our time is going to be eaten up with this in the coming weeks? How much of your time is going to be eaten up with this? And how legitimate is the possibility of impeachment?
How much of my time?
Yeah.
Zero.
Oh.
Zero. I'm working on drug costs, the duplication of benefits, maybe an infrastructure package. What do we do about Louisiana's coastline? The House of Representatives, which is going kind of crazy, they may be consumed by this, which since we do have issues such as duplication of benefits, disaster relief in general, drug costs, infrastructure, keeping the economy going, I would consider that a tragedy. On the other hand, they are so into the Trump derangement syndrome that they may go after the guy when there was no crime committed. And so if there was no crime committed, how do you possibly obstruct? Because there was no crime. It's just the craziest thing in the world.
Well, how much of this will get bogged down into it rearing its head into every other discussion? I guess that's a better way to ask this question is, as you continue to try to work towards anything that Louisiana needs, how much of this is going to be reverting back to that?
Now, this is going to be a total call on the Democratic House. But they ran for office never talking about impeachment, saying that if they took over the House, they would help make things work for the betterment of the American people. Mm-hmm. And so far, they seem to be captivated by talks of impeachment for a crime that was supposedly about a crime that didn't occur. Now, if they want to waste precious legislative time going after a crime about a crime that didn't occur, I think that hopefully the American people in next election cycle will look at them and say, you told us you weren't going to focus on impeachment. You were going to focus on our needs. You focused on impeachment, not our needs. Boom, we're putting Republicans back in power.
Okay, so backing them, basically they've painted themselves into a corner where this is concerned. If they want to move forward, they need to just go ahead and move forward. Senator Bill Cassidy, we are straight up out of time. I thank you so much for your time this morning and look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you, Brian.
Appreciate it.